Fellow citizens of the world, I welcome you to our live broadcast. Tonight, we will talk about Ellinon Syneleysis, a political organization formed in Greece back in 2015. Our tonight's guest, Evangelia Giadanou, is here to enlighten us about what Ellinon Syneleysis actually is, whose work expands outside the borders of Greece. Mrs. Giadanou, you are one of a number of candidates running for a seat in the Greek parliament and also a member of the political body and non-profit organization Ellinon Syneleysis. You are also running for the office of Prefecture of Rhodope, located in Thrace, northern Greece. Is that right?
Yes, it is. But I'd like to give me the opportunity to state that the correct term for Greece is Hellas and for Greek is Helen, or more correct, Elin.
Good. Let me ask you, is Ellinon Syneleysis just another political party of Hellas?
Not at all. Ellinon Syneleysis is a global anthropocentric organization which includes hundreds of autonomous, non-profit, non-governmental organizations in every municipality in Greece and worldwide. These offices were established and created for the first time in Hellene history in 2015 as the one and only political body representing the Hellene nation and all Hellene people around the world. All necessary legal, certified documentation, and of course the founding declaration and policy statements were also submitted to the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, Arios Pagos, on September 4th, 2015. It is a fact that all of the Greek political parties and their representatives were and are responsible for the suffering and economic hardships that the Hellene nation and its people are living today. One major role these political parties played and are still playing today is dividing and distorting our traditions and our way of life, and are ultimately destroying our society as a whole. All the political parties that governed our nation are responsible for what is happening to our nation on all levels, not only because they never performed their duty to protect and advance our human rights as native Hellenes and citizens. These political parties and their leaders created an unhealthy economic and unjust social environment that each and every one of these ruling parties willingly enforced conditions of captivity, oppression, and submission that came from anti-Hellene banking centers, leading our great nation to the painful situation that we are living today. Continuous store closings, business bankruptcies, and of course the Hellene state with its huge artificially structured debt. The consequences till this day are catastrophic, with an increasing unemployment rate that is getting worse as each day goes by. The massive influx and illegal immigration and its unmanageability, the rising birth rates of non-Hellenes, and the dangerous low birth rate of the Hellene nation is once again jeopardizing our democracy and pushing our great nation on a one-way ticket to genocide. And this time, it's our own government that is actually pulling the trigger. Our Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis stated in a Congress in Israel in 2018 that he will fight nativism. We can share the video with our viewers if you want to.
As authoritarian and populist forces are becoming more prominent throughout Europe and around the world. The rise of xenophobia, of nativism, of racism, of anti-Semitism. It's a reality today in Europe, unfortunately. It has to be confronted.
The fact of the matter is, democracy was born here in Hellas, and unfortunately we are witnessing a shameful and corrupt oligarchy, which in turn operates through its political particracy, which has nothing to do with the true meaning of democracy. And for this and many more reasons, we as ELIM natives and citizens, along with our elected president, Artemis Soros, founded the political body and organization, Ellinon Syneleysis, to restore all the rights of the ELIM nation, which include all our inheritance rights. In other words, all of our wealth, as well as every sacred and Hellenic spiritual right, for example, all our historical, scientific, and technological rights that belong to us, the sovereign Hellenic native indigenous people who live in Hellas and worldwide. Obviously, as you and your viewers and our viewers can see, that Ellinon Syneleysis has nothing to do with the non-existing political parties of the past. Instead, we are an all-inclusive body which is uniting the Hellenic nation apart from any political party lines, apart from all dogmas, and apart from the discrimination of color. Additionally, emphasis should be made on the fact that Ellinon Syneleysis is reaching out to the great number of Philhellenes, wherever they may come from, and together establish the real sense of the word democracy in its true and absolute meaning. This will achieve by a foundation based on an axis of the 33 protocols, which include 12 ELIM values, 18 principles, and 3 main state laws that our ancestors and forefathers of humanity had established thousands of years ago. However, these 33 protocols have been forgotten and misinterpreted. And for these reasons, we believe this is why humanity is experiencing the rising and ongoing high poverty level, with high social unrest, wars, and declining healthcare system for the majority of the people in Hellas and around the world. It's time for a real universal change for all people of our planet.
Mrs. Giadanou, this sounds great, but how will you and Ellinon Syneleysis manage this huge amount of ELIM debt? It is over 350 billion, isn't it?
Where there is a will, there is always a way. It is a fact that we have indisputable evidence that and proof of more than enough funds that are available in our World Trust accounts, and infinite amount of monies are available. But I will specifically, at this point in time, talk about the 600 billion American dollars which have been deposited by the one and only native indigenous Hellene, Mr. Artemis Soros. he has deposited the 600 billion into a custodial account in a Canadian bank in Montreal, Canada, since 2012, on behalf of the sovereign democracy of Hellas. Mr. Artemis Soros, who is the elected chairman and president of Ellinon Syneleysis, deposited this huge amount for the payment of state public and private debt. That was said by the Greek government to be outstanding. Mr. Soros informed all Greek governing bodies, the state parliament, and all international federal agencies around the world, submitting all necessary legally binding documents and following all protocols, and officially informed all institutions, judicial authorities, not only in Hellas, but also worldwide.
When you say worldwide, what do you mean?
I mean that everyone that needed to be notified has been notified. The US Treasury, the US Treasury Offset Payments Office, US Department of Transportation, the IMF, the European Union, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Greece, Arios Pagos, the Greek courts, and many other countries and agencies abroad.
What happened? Did the government respond? Did they repay the debt?
Actually, no, they did not. They altogether ignored the offer despite favorable terms. It was a loan proposal of $600 billion with a low 0.5 temporary interest rate, which Mr. Soros added because of a tax law. And it should be noted that the 0.5% would be made available again by creating a new account for the benefit of the Hellene nation and Hellas. This stimulus package of 600 billion would have completely changed the present and the future state of our nation. We would be regaining trust in the financial markets, establishing financial stability and independence. And all this could still happen, and without these unfavorable conditions set by the IMF towards the Hellene nation. Mr. Soros had no underlying claims or personal interests other than complete and absolute freedom from the banking cartel and its minions. Mr. Soros stated officially and in writing many times his only intention and purpose was and is to free the Hellene people and the citizens of Hellas once and for all, period.
This is great news for the Hellene people, but at the same time, very strange. And I say very strange because the question still remains. Why is the government not following through with Mr. Soros and the 600 billion?
Well, that's a great question. Why? This question should really be answered officially by all of the governing parties, but no one seems to want to touch this matter. What is really happening today is the government and all the political parties and representatives since 2012 up until today are not utilizing the money that Mr. Soros deposited because they have other interests in mind and not the well-being of the Hellene nation. And this is quite visible when we look at the situation in Hellas today, and unfortunately the funds that Artemis Soros deposited, well, these funds are just sitting there waiting to be used, and at the same time are collecting interests since 2015. We have several videos that I would like to share with you and our viewers. One recent video shows a government representative who openly, without hesitation, states the fact that an amount of 850 billion shows up in the state budget of 2020. You can show the video and share it with viewers if you want.
Επίσης και αυτό που είπε για τα 850 δισεκατομμύρια πράγματι, αλλά αυτό δεν οφείλεται στο ελεγκτικό συνέδριο. Τα 850 δισεκατομμύρια δανεισμός υπάρχει στους λογαριασμούς. Προσπάθησα, αν το προσέξατε, στη δική μου παρουσίαση να μην ανακατέψω αυτό το τεράστιο ηλικιώδες ποσό το οποίο πραγματικά αποπροσανατολίζει στην ανάγνωση του απολογισμού και του ισολογισμού.
Well, this is a very serious statement made by this government official, and at the same time, the ELIM people should be very angry that these representatives are talking about 850 billion in the Greek parliament, and the Greek people should ask themselves, why is that our nation and its people are financially suffering when we have 850 billion in the state budget of 2020. It seems these political traitors have no political risk or cost whatsoever for their actions and choice of words. They proceed to deceive the Hellenic nation and its people and continue unchallenged without any opposition the signing of ongoing loan agreements with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, with unbearable terms and conditions, the surrendering of our national sovereignty to a banking system cartel and its so-called lenders, as well as the sale and management of our national property. The government and all its political parties and representatives have signed all these agreements illegally because these are in violation of our constitutional law. In closing, I would like to say that all the Greek branches of government and all its authorities have failed the Hellenic nation and its people.
Earlier you mentioned something about the World Trust accounts. Could you explain what do you mean when you say World Trust accounts?
Sure. In 1944, the World Bank was conceived along with the Bretton Woods Agreement, which was signed in the state of New Hampshire. The World Bank's initial aim was to help rebuild European countries devastated by World War II with international development and poverty reduction. For this purpose, the 44 founding country members agreed to create the Global Heritage Trust, the Heritage Trust accounts, also known as the Global Debt Facility, for each member state. 76 years later, 198 countries joined this agreement. The big secret is that a document, specifically the annual balance sheet of the World Bank of 2007, was revealed to the public by Artemis Soros. This document has been signed every year since 1944 from the world institutions and presidents of the Republic, the finance ministers, and the United Nations ambassadors of each country. In these accounts, there are enormous amounts of money, quadrillions of dollars for every country. You can see it in the monitor. When it comes to Hellas, we had 115 trillion in one account in 2007. Why are our governments hiding these accounts from us? Why are people dying from poverty? Even all these migrants and refugees that left their homeland these recent years have a right to this wealth through this agreement because it is their wealth. However, their governments hide it from them, from these people who try for a better future far from their own country. Find your country's accounts and share the truth. There is a complete list of all countries and their wealth. Mr. Artemis Soros deposited personal guarantees to ensure the amount of 2.3 trillion euros for all developmental programs, and therefore he submitted 49,000 projects for Hellas and Cyprus.
How is it that Mr. Artemis Soros has offered to help Hellas and instead he has been put in jail?
That's a great question. In fact, Mr. Artemis Soros, the president of Ellinon Syneleysis, was persecuted and unjustly held in prison for 2.5 years. There were a number of charges against Artemis Soros, but all were dropped, except of the charge of intent of fraud. However, there was no evidence to prove this charge. He was released a few weeks ago and is finally at home with his family. What was done to this amazing and great Ellinon man was absolutely unfair and unjust. The purpose and existence of this incredible man is to end the tyranny and corruption that is taking place, and also put an end to what all the Ellinon people are living on today, on a day-to-day basis for the last decade. It is truly a dilemma. This must stop and this must change, and it will change as soon as the Ellinon people unite.
This information that we learned today was very informative. I heard it for the first time and I'm very surprised. Tell me about the experience of Artemis Soros in jail. Did he say something about this?
In his first interview after Artemis Soros' release from jail, he was asked if he was angry for the injustice that he experienced. He answered that if anyone else was in his place, he would feel anger and bitterness. But as he said, for him it was an opportunity to immerse himself in his writing, creating a timeless state of mind that enabled him to write almost 100,000 pages of sacred, epic, universal knowledge.
What do you mean by sacred knowledge? What did he write?
He wrote about true democracy, its function through values, principles, and laws that promote only justice and the truth. He wrote about our history and our great ancestors, about the structure of our language and how it generates words with their respective meanings. The meanings of the words such as democracy, freedom, truth, justice, politics, citizen, nation, and more. And all of them are based on a geometrical and mathematical structure of the Hellenic language. And Artemis Soros has written all of this during his imprisonment and continues to write, reaching the 100,000 pages, as I said, written by hand.
100,000 pages written by hand. That's impressive. Can we have access to these pages?
Of course. Knowledge is for free and for everyone. His writings are uploaded on the website etherikigraphy.gr. Everyone has a free access to download his writings and read his books. Additionally, our organization, Elinos Syneleysis, has a translation team that translates his writings. You may find the translated documents on the same website. Elinos Syneleysis is an anthropocentric organization that aims for the restoration of democracy for all humanity, and not only for the people that live in Hellas. Democracy, freedom, and justice are universal words and concepts for all people around the world. I would like to also add that more information regarding the work of Ellinon Syneleysis in English can be found through the SE Sydney blog, a blog that is designed and operated by our fellow Hélène Themis-Ioakimidis, who uploads the news of our political body. There is a contact information within this blog where everyone can contact us and learn more about our cause.
That's great. Feel free to write to Ellinon Syneleysis. Ask them anything and, of course, spread the word of truth. Mrs. Giadanou, thank you very much for this interview. Citizens around the world, thank you very much for watching. Until next time.
It was a pleasure and an honor for me as well. Good night.
Night.